from the small things to how many times I say sorry, the shifting of that energy, and that's been very obvious for me. And when it comes up for me, when I think I need to say it or want to say it. Also, the relationships of, I had so many questions and I feel so silly. Yesterday, when I was doing the last day of day 3 of module 2, I was writing down all these questions and then I lost my paper notebook thingy. And I was like, I had this moment, I was like, oh my God, Kimberly and Maya are going to be so proud of these questions. um,
I'm proud of that you lost them. I'm proud of that you lost them.
I was also really looking at my family and my own historical background with how much I know and how much I have not thought to ask. Just the other day, as I was sort of moving through all
Oh, I think I lost you.
passed away.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
did
No,
I
just
freeze?
repeat the last sentence. Yeah, just repeat the last one.
I didn't know that my mother had a younger sibling that never came to term. And it was just so interesting for me to understand some of the dynamics that play out in my mom's life. Um, what also came up for me is this relationship that I actually have with my father. That is, you had mentioned how sometimes the child can feel like the mother to the father. That's not what you said.
The better wife. We call it the better wife.
Yes, the better wife. And how I actually fill that role during certain times, especially when my father's not feeling well or his needs aren't being met.
Here we go. Yeah.
So there was a lot of like, I have so much more bubble ahas. Lost my paper, so it wasn't meant to be. In combination of being sick and not remembering, but I have to say it's been more of an interpersonal experience of seeing all the things happen around me that I never gave significance to because I was like, oh, that's just who they are. It's not who they are. It's just how things have manifested for them.
Exactly.
So yeah, just moments where it's even unspeakable. It's just, I felt it in my body. I was like, ooh, okay, that makes sense to me now.
And see, Suman, and this is why you lost your question, because the whole training is about you to experience it for yourself. And when you have experienced it for yourself, you can pass it on. If you have never experienced it for yourself, you cannot pass anything on to somebody else, like a client, right? And of course, the questions would be brilliant, and I would love to discuss them on a theoretical academic level. But for the purpose of your journey to become a systemic coach, they wouldn't be important, and they will be answered anyhow throughout the course of the next year, you know? So you can relax and trust in that and focus on your own experience. That's brilliant. That's exactly what we do.
It's been really nice just to have these small aha moments, and then they just kind of shift and move away. It's a beautiful, healthy unattachment. Yeah. So
and how does it feel in your body? How does it feel in your mind?
Freeing. So
yes,
free.
Freedom. Here we go.
So
That's
free.
exactly. That's all we want.
More personal experience for me.
Very good. It's really important that you feel that for yourself. Freedom and happiness is all family constellation is providing. Yeah. And that's a biggie, isn't it? The biggest.
Allowing it.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. How is about you, Kimberly?
Stephen, I'm the same way with the sorry thing. Like just, catching myself and stopping myself and rephrasing it in my head. And another thing I've really been doing is, and I don't know if I learned it in our class or in my readings or I can't remember, but it's about, I just ask like when I get reactive, you know, maybe somebody does something that irritates me and I need to have a release. And I stop myself and I think, is what I'm about to say or express gonna make them feel small or big or neutral? And so I'm stopping myself in, you know, and that, I love that. That's one of the biggest gifts, I think, for me, is really that, like, you know, what am I putting out there in that respect? And so it definitely changes your whole, you know, perspective and how you respond, you know, because I feel like in Hawaiian, they have a word, it's called kuleana. And it's like, once you have your awareness, you have to have your responsibility to that awareness. And I feel like,
that's nice.
you
Say it
know, once
again. Who?
Kuleana, and it's actually
Juliana.
it's a responsibility to the land for in Hawaiian. It's a responsibility once you know you take it over, but I feel that like it's responsibility to everything I create because we're constantly creating. I did have a couple questions, if that's okay.
Ah, here we go. Okay.
I can see if I can even find mine. Well, one of them was with the atonement and the I follow you and rather me than you. So rather me than you, I believe, is looking down. Is that right? Like you
Yeah.
look down. And then
Yeah.
I follow you, you're kind of looking out to the distance.
Yeah.
So atonement.
Hang on.
Is
It's a sign. It's a sign. It's not like 100%, never can be, but it's a sign like 90, I don't know, a figure 96%, yes. Yeah.
And atonement, is there an expression for atonement, or is it just if you're not looking away or looking down, possibly it's atonement?
Atonement is a feeling of guilt or shame.
And okay, good. And so the guilt or shame, you said, was the signal that there's anger, right? And so, like, if they have, if somebody's
and that's the other way around, Kimberly. If there's anger, you look for the underlying guilt and shame. If there's already guilt and shame, there is no anger.
so
the anger is on top of the guilt.
Angry, let's say in a constellation, somebody's saying, you know what, I feel mad, I feel angry. We should
then you can possibly look for guilt or shame. Yeah. The anger can have many sources. It could be an interrupted movement towards the mother, towards the father. Could be entanglement with another angry person. So
grief too. So they would not have grief then. I wrote with anger, I had grief and guilt or shame. Does anger hide grief and shame?
Maybe, can be.
Okay.
Can be.
Okay. All right. So that, I guess that was what I wanted to know. It's just, I'm just trying to look for the cues.
Yeah, the cue, exactly. So and they are only that cues, right? So you have a cue, but then you have to test it. You have to find out whether it's right. No, so it's it's not an autopilot thing. You're not going with I know what it is, and then you're going, and you're not connected to the fear.
Keep testing. You have to keep
testing.
Keep testing. You said that I follow you and rather me than you are connected often times that they go to
combined. Yeah.
And I don't totally understand that. And I was wondering if you could give me an example of how they would be combined.
Well, when a child says, let's say to the grandfather or to the parent, let's say the father, when the child says to the father, rather I die than you, then there is a reason why the father wants to die. And the reason why the father wants to die because it wants to follow the grandfather. So we cannot just help by clearing the rather me than you dynamic, because then the father still wants to follow the grandfather and the next generation can be entangled with him. We always have to find the way back to the true course of the trauma, where it started, and then go through the entanglements to release everyone who is in the wake of that, who's suffering in the wake of that. So you can go further back, and there can be multiple rather me's than you's and I follow you's or atonement for my sins dynamics.
Okay.
Possible.
And rather me than you can, and I know we always say it's done out of love, but it can be done out of like, I am bigger and better than you, so rather me than you, or I'm not gonna bow down to you, rather me than you, or I love you and I want to take this bullet, not you.
So if the rather me than you would be between a parent and a child was saying, I rather do it for you because I'm bigger than you, then it would be an interrupted movement towards the father, rather than a rather me than you dynamic. It would be the arrogant child, if you will. If there would be I do it better than you thought in the first generation towards the third generation, for example, yes, then you can check if that's a rather me than you dynamic.
Okay, and then there was one last question, and that was, okay, it was rather than me than you. Gosh, it just escaped me. Yes, here it is. Okay, an entanglement. For an entanglement, you said that there had to be 3 people. Does that mean 3 people total? There can never be more than 3 people, or there's
no, there can one entanglement has 3 people. Yeah.
3 people, no more, no less. 3 people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Very good. Wonderful. So let's go to today's teaching content, which is titled Staying Centered in the Truth. Now, as you would have guessed by now, it is also a book title of Bert Hellinger, like the first 2 modules. Of course, this is not translated literally. This is my translation. In German, it is called Die Mitte fühlt sich leicht an. And I do think it was his 3rd book, actually. And it is literally translated, in the center you feel lightness, you know. So I like to call it staying centered in the truth, because today we are not only feeling for ourselves, as you have already shared, that you feel more freedom when you are applying the orders of love in your own life, how freeing that is, yeah? Now it is about staying in this place, right? Being able to stay there, because that is the truth. The truth is where this opening happens, this more freedom. That's where the truth lies, not where the stuff is. The stuff is not true. There is no truth or untruth in stuff. When this all falls away and you feel the freedom, like you said, to create your own reality, that is the truth. This is how life works, right? The rest is deception. So staying centered in the truth is the fundamental aspect of being a fantastic systemic coach and family constellation facilitator. Yeah. So what are we looking at? Part 1, that would be the art of helping. So we go through today what Bert Hellinger is calling in a book. I think it's in English translated, The Art of Helping. I don't even know if it's translated. It's in German, of course, Die Kunst des Helfens. And it is a thick book, and it is very enlightened. Of course, some principles are known, like this is nothing new, but just looking at it from the angle of a family constellation and a facilitator who's providing the safe space for everyone to connect to the morphogenetic field and look at deep traumas, has a different twist to it. Tomorrow in part 2, we are looking at how to structure a workshop. We go to all the details, how a family constellation workshop looks like. And then on Sunday, we're going to personal development, unsolved emotions, and some more troubleshooting to round up the 3 modules, which are covering the basics of Bert Hellinger's teaching. Yeah? So today, the art of helping. Now, have you, I believe you have you facilitated groups, both of you?
Yes.
Yes, you have. Yeah. What is the average size of a group you have? Just to have a picture.
Did you say size, Maya?
Size, people, participants?
Anywhere from 8 to 12 people. Most of mine have been clinical, psychological, process oriented.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you, Kimberly?
not facilitated family constellation groups, right? Just other groups?
Just any groups, yeah.
Probably like 30-ish.
Yeah, good. So you have some experience how that feels to be, you know, the in charge of a group, right? So that's what we're going through today as well. Today we are first of all talking of the position of the helper in systemic coaching. We are talking about how to lead a client, how to lead the group. We're talking about group dynamics. Then we are looking at leading the representatives in the family constellation, how we are, if and how we use, how we advise to use or change words with the representatives. And then we are looking at some traps you could fall into while you are leading a group or a client or a representative. Okay, let's look at the facilitator. I have a quote here from Bert Hellinger. All you have to do is to place yourself in the position as a facilitator and trust the field to guide you all the way. That is good news, of course. That's all you need to do. But however, a random person cannot do that because they don't have the backbone of the knowledge and experience of what a family constellation is, right? And that is your fundament. That's the fundament that you're built on, and this needs to be first built, like you build a house. First the foundation, and then all the rest, right? And we are going through the foundation in our course, right? That's it. Without the foundation, everything will crumble and fall. But once you have built the foundation, you can sit there in the position which we talk about, in the right position. So you place yourself in the position as a facilitator, meaning as in the right position of the facilitator, and then everything will come. Yeah. So what is then the position of the helper? The position of the helper is at the bottom of the family system, next to the client. So when you remember module 1, part 1, or you rewind it and you watch it again, I had this little animation there with the 7 generations. And the client is always the first generation. And then we have 7 onwards and 7 like his children and so on, grandchildren forward. The helper sits or stands, is positioned next to the client, because if he would be anywhere else, he would already not obey the second order of love, the order of precedence. Because the client came first. Everyone out of the family system came first, right? So the helper is the last one. And therefore the helper cannot be like, let's say, position themselves like with the parents or the grandparents or the ancestors or anywhere else. But just because the helper is positioned next to the client doesn't mean that he's working for the client. He's part of the family system as long as he's helping, and he's serving the family system, not the client. The client is a messenger sent by the family system, unknowingly most often. Sometimes they actually know it, but very rarely. Unknowingly, the client is sent by the family system because he feels unbearable negativity in his life normally. And the family system is creating that for this person, so they have a chance to heal. The whole system. The helper is for the whole system. If there is a decision to go with what the client wants or what the family system wants, you always go with what the family system wants, not the client. The client comes with expectations, has a desire to look at a specific thing in his life, and then it turns out when you connect to the morphic field of their family system that it is not that you want to work on. You're going to work on the mother relationship, for example. And that's where you go with. Because the field is always telling you accurately, 100% every single time, why the client came. And why do we know that? Because in the end, the client is happy, more happy, even though we haven't looked at his issue. He feels this relief. He feels this weight from the shoulders. He feels this, this new opening, this new freedom in life. And that's why we know that every client is just sent by the family system. They have different things in their minds. That's okay. And you don't need to be rude. Bert Helling was always very direct with this. So you don't need to do that if it's not your thing. You don't need to be somebody else. But you be aware of it and you don't get misled by the client. The family system always comes first. So if there's a conflict between the client and the family system, go with the family system. What you do is, as a facilitator, you connect with your knowledge and experience, and you know it's there. That's your foundation. You know it's there. It's rocket solid. It's not going anywhere, and you sit on it. You don't need to have notes or books or anything to look anything up. When you're facilitating, you completely let go of all of this. And you rely on the foundation that you have built. This is why the foundation is so important. If it's a good foundation, and I give you today a couple of examples of not a good foundation. If it's a good foundation, you know exactly what you need to do. There will be no moment where you are confused after a time. I'm not talking about the first tries, but after a few years, you know exactly what's going on. You want to achieve nothing. That's the position of the helper. That's maybe different to therapies, where you kind of have a certain goal where the therapy should go. In family constellation, we don't do that. We don't want to achieve anything. We are helping the family system to have a voice, to show what they need. They help themselves. It's a self-healing method. We're just providing the space so they can do that. And the guidance, of course. And we frame it for them so it can be visible and it's not confusing. And we help them to find back to the orders, because we know of the order, the family system knows of the order, but the involved members not. Yeah. So that's all we do. So therefore, we don't want to achieve anything. Whatever comes out of a family system is what comes out, not our thing. It's not nothing to do with us. And therefore, we don't want a specific outcome anyhow. You have no desire to help. That's also very important for the position of the helper. It sounds like a, how can I say, like a opposition of this. You have no desire to help, and you are a helper. You want to become a helper, but that is true. There is no desire. That means you are not important. You are not desiring anything. The client is important. Their family system is important. Yeah. Not you. It's not about you, the facilitator. It's about the client and the family system. So therefore, you have no desire to help. If somebody comes to you and wants help, you are open. That also means if somebody doesn't want any help, you leave them in peace. Yeah? But the way people ask for help can be very different. So it's not only a client comes and pays and sits there and then they want help. Yeah, you can have random experiences on the street, but you need to be very careful with that and be really connected to the field to understand that this is they met you unconsciously to be helped, right? This is a slippery slope, especially when you're very intuitive. So you need to train to be observant. Yeah, I give you an example. I remember many years ago, I was in my training with Bert and Steffi Hollinger, and I was at a formal dinner. It's a large table, and to my right sat a woman I have never met, and we were, talking, and we were talking, and it was for somebody, it was not only about the weather for some reason, right? And then all of a sudden, I saw her two children and how she's struggling with them, right? And then because I wasn't the training, I was not aware what I'm doing. I said to her, "What about your children?" Right? And right at the dinner table, she broke in tears, which was, of course, very uncomfortable, right? And then she said, "How do you know?" And so it was not pleasant. I just tell you that. So I really understood you're not doing this. You're not doing this. Yes, you're not sitting coincidentally next to somebody and feel vibes, but still, that is not an ask to help. It's still not is. You cannot interpret that into an encounter. That's not to us, right? They don't need to pay for it, they don't need to buy. But if she would have said further in the conversation, you know what, I really have a problem with my children, right? And then you say, oh, I'm training family constellation, maybe I can help you, right? Other thing, right? But just because you're connected to the field doesn't mean that you can start to oppose this information onto somebody, right? So I learned from that. I'm not doing that anymore, of course not. But you can always say, look, if you ever want to come to a family constellation workshop, come and see me for whatever any reason you have. Might be with your children, might be with your work, whatever it is. You can always say that. You can always offer that. If you feel there's something needed to be looked at, and they might have not met you by coincidence. So that is no desire to help. You have no desire to help. You sit there, be it at the dinner table, be it in the workshop, you sit there and you wait what happens. What happened? And Bert Hellinger was, of course, the master of all. He sometimes just sat with a client, he gave him one word or a sentence, and then he sent them back to the seat. That was the constellation. He didn't ask a question. They didn't talk. That was it, right? So this is also no desire to help. No stress. I need to facilitate now a constellation for this client. If it's not needed, it's not needed. That can everything can happen. So the position of the helper is also the practice of waiting and silence. That is actually the situation the helper is in the state of waiting and in the state of silence. Right? And see what information comes from the morphogenetic field. The client might speak, the client might not speak. Right? So saying that is that the facilitator is not speaking much. So if you have your first few workshops done and you come out with a sore throat, you have talked too much. It should be very relaxing for your throat to be a facilitator. You don't need many words. Yeah. Therefore, we don't try to do something when we are sitting with a client or when we are facilitating and working with the representatives. We don't try to do something. We are the only thing, if you want to call it doing, is observation. We are observing. That's what we do. And then while we observe and we are becoming the information of the morphogenetic field through our observation, then there is some obvious further steps to take. They are so obvious over time for you that you don't feel it is a doing. So you're not trying hard to get to any kind of result. Then also, the best position of the helper is to not know anything. And that's also an art. Of course, you learn a lot, and you should know. You should gain knowledge and experience. No doubt about that. Yeah. But in the moment you are working, you can forget all of it, because you need to absorb the information from the field. And this, it's quite a heavy use picture of a full glass. You cannot fill it up further. So when your glass of knowledge is full, like perceived, I'm talking about, we never know much at all, but if we perceive it as we know much and the glass is full, then we cannot gain any more knowledge, right? So we always make sure our glass is at least half full, if not empty. So new knowledge can come in, new knowledge and new and this is the way you can resonate with the field, to be open. You can ask as a the right position of the help is also to ask the teachers for support. Whoever your teachers are, whoever your gurus are, whoever your spiritual guides are, just before you go and put yourself in the position of the helper, ask for support. That is the right humility, the right amount of humility that gets you closer to connect with the morphogenetic field. It doesn't need to be literal. It doesn't need to be ritualistic or anything. A story comes to my mind that I found quite funny. Way back, a couple was trained with Bert and Sophie Hallinger, and they were facilitating together. So they had 2 chairs for themselves, and then they had the chair for the client. So 3 chairs, and then they had 2 chairs behind themselves, and they were always empty. And when they've been asked who the chairs are for, they said for Bert and Sophie Hellinger to have their support. And I found that a bit spooky to have this empty chair staring at all the time. I don't think that's necessary. I'm pretty sure they would be there if they're not sitting comfortably. So, you can take it to any extent you wish, but that's certainly not necessary. But just to honor and respect the teachers and what you have gotten from your teachers, and then to ask them for support, and then you feel already you have put yourself in the right position of the helper. There's a wonderful book, going back. There's a wonderful book that I loved when I read it. It's a long time ago, but now I saw it's available on Audible, which is very handy. It's called The Book of Not Knowing by Peter Ralston. I think he's American. And have a look if you wanted to. It's very, very enlightening. His way of unraveling everything he thought he knows to come to the state of being completely empty again and being able to fill the glass up again. Okay, now we are talking about how we lead a client. So first of all, we invite the client to constellate. So that, in my opinion, that's an invitation. Nobody has to. To give you an example, in Bert Hellinger's workshops, sometimes, and there were hundreds of people, sometimes all of a sudden people are, lifting their hand and, ooh, take me. And then he would just say something, you, and he would point at somebody who was like shocked and then gets up and he would work with them. Of course, he was guided by the field to take him. And it was certainly the right thing to do. No question about that. I find it in the smaller workshops that you will have a little bit confrontational, and people can be a little bit shy about that and don't really open up really much. So I'd rather ask who wants to constellate, basically. Yeah. And let them put the hands up, and then the field will decide out of these people who have the hands up who's at the right time at the right place to do the constellation. Now, very occasionally, of course, you can also pick somebody, but this somebody has already with the body language signaled they want to, it's not completely out of the blue. They probably just they want to give others the choice, people are always, I come last, and then you might feel, no, that's the one I want to work with, but it is definitely somehow communicated that they want to constellate. And of course, always to be respected is if people come to the workshop that don't want to constellate. Let's say you start with workshops and they may be small. You start probably with 5, 6 people, and you have, I don't know what, 6 hours in your workshop, and you really have time for everyone to constellate. And then you figure out 2 of them don't want to constellate, and you think, oh my gosh, what am I doing with the spare time? Yeah, just do something else. Do some meditation, do some exercises, do some readings out of books or explanations about the orders of love or anything. Yeah, but don't worry about them. If they don't want to constellate, that's totally fine. And they probably really need that. Whatever they get out of the workshop as a representative and observer to do the next step. And then after the next step, they might be ready to constellate in the next workshop. So always follow that guidance. There is really no pressure on that. Now, leading the client, where does the client sit? Do you know? You have been to in-person workshops, right? Both of you. Where have you been sitting when you were constellating?
I only did it online, Maya.
Yeah, okay. And Kimberly, did you went to an in-person one?
Well, I actually represented myself in workshops, and then I've also, I've always been next to the facilitator.
Yeah, where? What side?
Oh gosh, I didn't pay any attention. I really didn't pay any attention to what side. I'm thinking, I feel like it was to the right side, maybe, but I could be wrong. I really don't know. To be honest, Maya, I don't know.
And where do you think, so the setup in an in-person workshop is you have a circle setup or a half circle, depends on how many people you have. And then there are 2 chairs in the center of, not in the center, at one end of it, the circle. And in one chair does the facilitator sit, and in the other the client that comes out of the circle. Where do you think does the client sit? To the left of the facilitator or to the right of the facilitator? And you should be able to answer that by what you have learned already.
Well, I would guess to the right.
Okay, and Zuman, what's your opinion?
To the left.
Okay, are you guessing now, both of you, or do you have a reason why you say that?
I think I'm just guessing now because I'm confused.
Right, okay. And Kimberly, what would be your reason?
Well, I'm just thinking, I know the mom is on the left side and the dad is on the right, and I'm still confused about what that looks like.
Yeah, okay.
You know, but I never sat in a constellation. I was always, never sat, Peter never sat either. We were always standing.
Okay, all right. Then watch a few videos of Bert Hellinger. They are all in the list on our community site. Not all, but some really good ones. And then you see how the seating is. The client always sits on the right of the facilitator. That's correct. And that's also correct to think of the first of the second order of love precedent. It's not that when you say man, woman, we are talking about the one who secures the system, the little family system, is on the right because it's more important. Not that the others are not important, it's just the order, yeah? So on the right, and then on the left, the one who doesn't secure the system, mainly the women who has then the children, they come to her left, yeah? So that is the order of precedence. And yes, Kimberly, you're right. That is the same with the client is more important than the facilitator, obviously, right? So when the facilitator would sit on the right and the client would sit on the left, then the facilitator would put themselves in the wrong place. And he would already oppose on the family system a new breach of the orders. Yeah? Because he's part of the family system in this moment, next to the client, remember? And then not in the right place, meaning the second order of love is not obeyed, right? So how can he help from here? Not really. He cannot help from there, right? So therefore, we always sit the clients on the right, ourselves on the left. We have a little bit of, let me use the figurines and I quickly show it to you how that looks in a family constellation workshop. I just have to start.
As you're doing that, Maya, I remember you mentioning that usually in-person workshops are done sitting down on the floor. Bert Hellinger used to do his workshops by sitting on chairs.
I never sit on the floor.
Oh, where did I
No.
get that from?
Not from me.
I don't know where
Always
I got
in chairs. I
Okay.
wouldn't even allow the participants to go on the floor.
that. Okay.
Yeah, they are losing the connection, strength of the field. So let me stop this sharing and share my camera with you. Hang on. Okay. So let's take a workshop here. Whatever, few figurines. And they're all sitting on seats. These are 2 chairs. That's the facilitator. So that would be the workshop, yeah? If there's a small number, you make it half round, and there's a more of a gap. So I just exaggerate so you can see it better. So they're all sitting there, yeah? That's how it looks, right? Hang on, I think I have to mirror it. That's better, huh? So that's the left side. Can you see that?
Okay, so the way I look at it, okay, so that's the left side. That's if the little blank spot is facing towards
Well, you
me,
look
then.
where the figurine is looking, of course, not
So
from your
that's what
perspective.
I was
Your
trying to-
perspective doesn't matter. It matters the
That's-
perspective of the person, right?
Mhm.
So you would have in a larger workshop, you would have like a round, and then the family constellation takes only place in here, not behind them. They are forming the boundary here, yeah, of the field. So everything happens inside the field. Who steps out is out, yeah, if you will, right? Who steps out is out. If you have a really large group, which I wish you would have, then you sit them in rows, right? Just another row behind them, like this. Yeah.
Maya, I'm sorry. Contextually, you're saying that we are on the left side of the facility. The client is on the left side of the. Sorry,
The
you
right
are on
side.
the left side of the. I'm sorry, Kimberly. What did you say?
You're
on the
right.
left side. This figurine is on the left side of the client.
So, Suman, you're right.
Got
Yes,
it.
exactly. It's kind of backwards because that's what I was asking. So,
Yeah.
like you were like our right hand our right side would be next to the client.
Yeah.
So what?
When you're at the left side, the client sits on your right side, of course.
The client, we are already the blue person. The client is on the client is empty right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the seat.
All right. That's a
The
seat.
round
Yeah.
thingies are the seats, right?
Yes.
So this is the setup of the workshop. You come in through the door, you sit on the left seat, and then you ask who wants to constellate. Let's assume everybody who has a green color puts up their hand. Now you are like, okay, whom am I choosing? Do I choose the one with the most pretty face, or do I choose the one who's raising the hand the most, or what? No, you wait in silence and see what information comes to you. You look at each of one, and then you know. So in this case, I mean, I haven't really placed them for this purpose, but in this case, we probably go with whatever. So we go with this figurine. Let's say this figurine, yeah? Then you ask these participants to come and sit here. So now he's sitting on your right side. There's a little gap, but probably not that much, maybe that much. Yeah, but there's a decent gap between the participants. You don't want to mix up their issues with the client's issues. So, of course, I put them just randomly. They're all looking normally. They're all looking at you.
Question, Maya. So let's say for the client that you picked their mother and father, how would you place their mother and father that would be appropriate according to order?
Father, right, mother, left, children to the left. That would be the order.
Okay, so I'm just confused. So the client is in the background.
Yeah.
And the family is in front of them?
Yeah. Well, you asked me what is father, mother, and children. This is father, mother, and children.
Well, I mean to the client though. If we were to do the parents to the client and put them.
No, that's the way. We can't go there now. We are not going to constellation. It's just the order where the helper sits. Right?
Okay. So we learn later the order of the constellation?
Well, there is no order. The constellation is what it is. We don't know. We are not doing constellation.
But where it should be, like where we want it to be.
There's no shoulds, Kimberly. There's no shoulds. You know when the father is on the right side, the mother is on his left side, and the children are there, that there is no issue. When the mother is on the right side of the father, or the children on the right side of the mother, then you know there's something to look at.
That's what I was wanting you to show me, just what it looks like, because I don't conceptually understand either of those, what it means to be on the right side or the left side, the way the client is facing. If that makes sense to you?
Like, where the client is facing? No, you're not looking at if you want to know who's to the right or left, just look at the shoulders. Just look at the shoulders. Let's say you have a person here, that's the father.
Yes.
He has a right side and a left side. He has arms.
So he's facing away. So
it doesn't matter where they face. They can face this way. It's still the same side. So now this woman is at his left side.
Okay.
This would be the right side because this is his right arm. And this is his left side. And we are not moving the figurines to our pleasing. The figurines are what they are. If the figurines are here, then the figurines are here. It's just for us to observe that the orders of love is disturbed. Right?
I think that it's been a little bit challenging for me to grasp this because we've been doing our lessons online and we're not actually moving and next to one another. And so that's a whole nother thing that I don't even understand how to do it online with, when I have done it online, we move around like in our own space. So this is the first time I've done it just sitting and like sort of feeling.
That's okay. And we cannot spend the next 2 hours thinking about something you haven't experienced yet. You have to experience it. This is why you watch videos, you go to other workshops in your area, you practice with friends and family. You have to experience it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is totally obviously what the right and left side is, as long as you are not, what is this term, this condition where you mix it up all the time.
Right. No, that was very helpful just to see. So you put the first person in, whether it be father or mother, and then you put the other one in, and then you see where they land, and then that can show.
Exactly.
Right.
And then that shows. Right.
That's right.
So now you are working with your client here. Then you ask the client to choose representatives. Yeah, the client normally, then you get up, you go, let's say there are 3 representatives chosen, then you get up into the circle, and then you walk around and you observe them. You observe them, where are they looking, what is their emotional state, just gather information, right? Just gather information, and then you would ask them how they are. For example, you would ask this bright blue figurine, well, you see they are looking down, you would know they are sad or something, looking for something. So you would ask them, how do you feel? And they would probably say, I'm sad, right? And because they're looking down and saying they are sad, you would ask another person, maybe this one, to lie down in front of them. And then you would ask her again, how do you feel now? And then they would say, oh, now I feel relieved or something, whatever. Yeah. And so you found one of the missing person here. Right? It's like a detective work. You're always looking for that is not obvious. You're always looking for that's not yet there. Right? And then, so let's say there's movement, then there's an entanglement. Let's say that is that moves over there. That's the entangler. And then she is free and she can turn around and maybe even wants to walk out the door. That's fine. That's the end of the constellation. Because obviously, big relief has taken place and the right big victim and perpetrator are united and the entangled person is free. This is how it looks like in an in-person situation, right? And yes, you're totally right. I forgot about that. If you have not seen a lot, you just have to see it to understand it. Yeah. So now coming back to our seats, now you see the client is sitting here. The client is not going in the field unless you ask, let's say the client is this this purple figurine, whatever, unless you can now ask if they want to swap. So you can ask them, do you want to take the place of your representative? And then if he says yes, he would go in and you would ask them to go exactly in the same position, exactly, not somewhere there, right? The field is always very precise with positioning. You need to be always very precise. So every centimeter counts here. So you would ask him go exactly in the position. So he would go back to his chair and he would go exactly in the same position, yeah? And continue from there. Maybe turning around there, yeah? Exactly the same. If you ask the client and they say, no, I don't want to, then that's fine. Just continue. You don't have to ask. The whole constellation can go without the client. However, if the client can't see because everybody's facing with their backs to him, like here, and they can't even see the representative on the floor, they can always move and sit somewhere else in the room to watch that. Yeah? So they don't need to sit on their seat. That's not important. But it is important that they don't stay here. Now let's take all of this out. Let's say now we have a workshop. Take all of this out. We are back to the beginning of the constellation, yeah? If he said he wants to work and if there would be no seat, yeah? And he would work from there, right? I understand, Kimberly, that's what you have experienced. You don't sit next to, yeah? The connection is very difficult. You barely can connect with this field or this because they all want to work. Like, you remember, all the greens want to work. So you make completely clear to every other family system that is in the room, if you will, yeah, I just use this picture, that you are not working with him or him. You are working with him, and therefore he has to come. Also, he would be maybe in his comfort zone in there, but as soon as he sits, this is why we call this a hot chair, something is happening with the client. They normally they even change what they want to work on. They forgot what they want to work on. They sweating. They are trembling. They might burst in tears. Yeah, that is all good and happening. It's a good release and already also in a hint for you how to work with the client. So that's important. It's really important that it sits next to you and that you sit there in silence. And if it's online, and I'm not recommending to do online workshops when you start with, you should definitely do in person, because as Kimberly just said, it is so confusing if you don't have the 3D picture in front of you of what they say. So first of all, you need to have a full picture of what you see when you talk to somebody. So somebody's saying something and you see the members exactly how they are placed in a room. Yeah. In front of your inner eyes. That's the only way you can work online. This is why we use figurines when we work one-on-one online. Otherwise, it is not like, of course, there is something like spiritual constellation or internal constellation, but also therefore you need the 3D vision of what's going on. And therefore you have to see it for yourself. So there's no way around. You have to do family constellation in person. Yeah. Very, very important. Either in person or use object. There's no other way for the first years to do it properly and not be confused. Yeah. And you don't want to set yourself up for anything else than success. Yeah. Right. Remember. Okay. But was this helpful? And then when the constellation is over, let's say he's set somewhere here, observing the constellation, everybody goes, then he's not going back to his place, he comes back to his chair because you want a closing with your client. And it can be very, very quick. You normally just say to the client, how do you feel now? And they would say, oh, I feel great, or they say, I'm a bit confused. And whatever they say, it is good. You're not discussing them, right? You just let them express what they feel, and then you say, okay, we leave it here. You can go back to your seat. So you can, if you are very confident, you can explain what you have seen, but only very, very, very brief and basic. It does not make the movement of the field any better if you talk about it at all. But sometimes for the whole group, because it's still a group experience, some constellations need to have a word or two about, so they know what they have seen, because they couldn't follow. Yeah. But for the client and the movement of the soul of his family system, you don't need to talk about it at all. Right? And now you say to him, okay, you can go back to your seat, and then you can either take the next one, or you do a break, or you do an exercise, or a meditation, or whatever comes to your mind, a dance, whatever comes to your mind. Yeah? And otherwise, the seat is always empty, unless you work with a client. Okay? And maybe so you can memorize it. I tell you a story I just have recently heard about. One of the training community, of our training community, went to a workshop that somebody in her hometown has organized for the first time, his first workshop. I know him, he's not our trainee. And I think he had 4 people together, and he asked her to come to represent. And the story was that when she came in, he was sitting, guess what? On the right chair. And then, of course, she asked him, right? Because she learned it the other way. Do you not want to sit on the left chair? And then he sat on the left chair. And she tried it. And then he said, no, that doesn't feel right. I want to sit on the right chair. So he decided, that was his feeling, yeah, that he wants to sit on the right chair. And that is how he conducted the workshop. Now that you know a little bit more about the second order of love in the meanings of the role of the helper, what do you think was this workshop about? Who was the important person here? It was him. He was sitting on the right side. It was not the client, it was about him. And that actually is totally accurate, because it was about him. He wanted to know if he can and how he can facilitate a workshop.
Mm.
It was not about the clients. It was not about their progress. It was about him facilitating. And he felt that. He felt it. So he put himself on the right seat. I thought that was really noticeable to share that. So, you know, if you feel the urge to sit on the right chair, remember that is correct because it's your first or one of the first workshops. You're nervous. You think it's about you, but it's not. So you hold yourself together and sit on the left chair because otherwise you cannot work with the client. It is impossible because you have already distracted the orders. Yeah, you will not be open to what the family system is actually telling you, and you will do whatever it is, role plays, I call that. No, but not a family constellation. So take that home as a to memorize that, and you will never, and you will understand if you have the urge to sit on the right chair why this is. Okay. So where are we now? Connecting to the field is of course what is leading you, so you can lead the client, right? So your lead is a connection to the morphogenetic field of the family system of the client. That's all you need. That's as much leading as you need. You stay empty and collected. That's a term in German, it's with a K, collected, that Bert Hellinger uses, and I like to use it as well. And why it's not connected, it's collected, because think of a basket and of apples, right? If you have an empty basket and the apples are all scattered around it, yeah, you need to collect the apples and put them in the basket so you have a basket full of apples, right? As long as you're not collecting the apples, you don't have a basket full of apples. You have a basket and here an apple and there an apple and there an apple, but not a basket full of apples. And when you want to have all your skills together in your plumber box, right? You need to collect them all and put them in the plumber, and then that's there. So you have a toolbox full of tools. That's why you stay collected. Yeah. And if it doesn't make sense to you, that's fine. In German, it doesn't make sense neither, but it is resonating. Yeah. So you just say of staying empty and collected, although it sounds like something that makes no sense, and you will feel it over time, what that means. Yeah. To collect your senses, to have them not scattered around. Yeah. While staying empty. Like the glass of knowledge, remember? Let it fill up by the field. That should be filled up by the field, yeah? And then you will actually feel what your client feels. You might feel pain in the leg, you might feel pain in the heart, some congestion in the heart, or some strain on the throat, or you will feel things, yeah? When you're collected. And then you can ask the client, even if they're not talking, what is wrong with your knee? What is going on in your left knee? And then they would be surprised, oh my gosh, it's hurting since I'm a child or something like that. And then you know you should work with that, regardless what the client came for. Because that is what the family system has just given as the most important information. So in order to be receptive to it, you have to be empty and collected. So then the next question is to let the client talk or not talk. That is here the question. Of course, it's free after Shakespeare. So do we or do we not let them talk? Well, of course, it's totally up to you. The only thing I urge you to do is stay, in a certain time frame and don't listen to what he says. That's important. They can say whatever they want. You are only listening to the information of the morphogenetic field. Therefore, Bert Hellinger found time is pressure, cut through the fluff, stop them right away when they start to rant. He knew, you know exactly what's going on anyhow before the client even has an idea or clue, and start working. However, you know, there are clients that really need to empty their thoughts or heart or whatever before they are open to receive. So why not? If you have the time, you can let them, but not too long. Yeah. But the most important part is don't buy into what they say. Of course, on the other hand, there can be valuable information what the client says, which would not be his, but information from the morphogenetic field. But there's a very different feeling to it, and you will receive it. You will feel which words are strong and really important, and which words are just blah, 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 especially when they are complaining. So my mother did this, my father did this, my father was never there, my father hit my mother. These are all stories. We are not working with that. Yeah. This is the emotional body or the ego of the individual wants to draw you into the story. Yeah. But you are not. You stay here. You stay empty and connected with the field, and it will give you all the information you need. So, for example, they go on and tell that who did what and what horrible, mostly horrible childhood they all had. Yeah, which is fine. Of course, they could have that, but it's not our role to make that better or feel them better about their childhood. Our role is to find out what the family system needs through this client to heal. Now, while, let's say, the client goes on and on and on with the stories, you're staying empty and collected. You're not going with what this goes in here and out there, in, out, in, out. And then you feel all of a sudden this sadness. And then you would probably stop them regardless what they just say and say, what is about the sadness? And then they would stop and maybe cry or do something heavy reaction, because that is what lies under all this ranting. Right? And then you work with this sadness. And this is why you don't need to listen to that. However, if they are talking, okay, if they're sitting there and say, I'm worried because my father has killed himself when they were 40, and my grandfather has shot himself when he was 40, and I'm 39. That is an information from the field. That is not ranting. So you would definitely work with this dynamic, right? So then I would not, and you always, and the difference is that they say that normally quite unemotionally. Normally there are no emotions attached to that. It's like a literal information. And often they say something they have never thought about before. For example, they want to sit there and work on their relationship problems, let's say. And then they sit in the hot chair and that's gone. That doesn't even come to mind. And then all of a sudden they say, I don't know why, but I'm thinking of my great-grandfather. I never met him. That's an information from the field, right? So whenever there's no emotion or no ranting going on, complaining going on, then you listen more closely, right? Okay. Avoid suggestive questions, of course. You can ask them, so what is with you? You don't need to feel out. That's not your job to feel out wordless. Your job is to ask question and find out what it is about, right? So you would ask question, what is it about? If you're not 100% sure you know it already, because you got the information, you ask what it is about, what can we do for you, meaning the group, and so on. And then they would say something, and then you would pick that what you hear has strengths, and then you would start, okay, we work with this. Or if they have 3 different issues, they talk about 3 different, they said, I want to look at my relationship problem, I have a disease, XX, or I have I have a problem with my father relationship, right? And then there are 3 options, and then you pick the one that feels the strongest, that has the most impact. And it's just a, an information from the field, which one you pick. And don't worry about which one you pick. The one you pick will be the right one. So, it's just, whatever reasoning you have to pick one, it will be the right one. What I want to say here is avoid suggestive question. Just because he sits there and you feel something, let's say he sits there and you think about your mother all of a sudden. You're assuming this is an information from the field, and you would say to him, you are here because of your mother, aren't you? See, this is a suggestive question, right? He might sit there and he might resonate with your field, yeah, and your mother issue, right? You don't know that, right? Because you were not thinking of his mother, you were thinking of your mother, right? So be very precise with that, and you cannot suggest to him that. You would probably think, you would probably ask him, what is about your mother? It's a completely open question, not suggestive. It's just a question, yeah? But you would not suggest that he's coming here because he has problems with his mother. So that's the difference. Yes, Kimberly.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Maya, but the whole reason I'm doing this is because I can see it in my clients' charts. Like,
Yes.
So how does that work with this?
No idea. You have to show us.
Okay, fair enough.
You have to show us. I would be really happy if we do an experimental practice workshop where you bring a chart of a client. Like in the next practice workshop, when you come to the practice workshop, bring a chart of the client, and we see how it goes.
So then I would have to have my client join the workshop?
No, you just need the permission to do that. They don't need to be there.
So when I do charts, I mean, I'm spending hours before I look at it. I don't just sit down and do somebody's chart. I spend hours beforehand delving into it. It would have to be somebody that wanted to do that. You know what I mean?
No.
You could do my chart.
Okay, Suman, fair enough. Suman got it. Suman understands what I'm saying. I would love to, Suman. I'm glad you're.
I lost you. What are you talking about?
So when I do charts and I work with clients, I spend, like a few hours before I meet them, looking in the chart and sort of like in the constellations, right? I'm doing research and I'm uncovering stuff. I don't just look at it and come up with this sort of,
Yeah, I understand that, but what's the question here?
Well, if I was just going to show up at a workshop, I would have already had to research that person's chart way before, like put in.
Well, you can invent your own workshop. You can create a workshop with 5 people.
I thought you meant to do like our workshops together where we come and do it.
Yeah, but you need to bring a case that you know of course.
I'm going to bring Sue in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring Sue, but your client doesn't need to be there. That's what I say. You can take any chart.
The client doesn't need to be there. I see.
In this case, Maya, is it better that the client isn't there or is there?
It doesn't make a difference. As long as the client asks you to do it. Yeah, you cannot do it for somebody who doesn't want it, of course.
I would feel more comfortable having that client there to be a part of it and to witness it.
Then take Suman, yeah.
Now, just to sort of acknowledge it. Okay, that was just it. But okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, so remember, when you're leading the client, you are neither an authority nor a friend, right? You're not there to make friends. Yeah, but you're also not there because you are like a teacher, an authority, or a religious leader or anything like that, right? You are there as the helper. That's not an authority. That's somebody who is of service, yeah, service to the family system. So don't come into either. It's mainly out of insecurity when facilitators are starting or when they never really get the grip of it due to lack of proper training. They they resort to being a friend or an authority as a means of helping them to be guided by their work, because they don't know how it is to be of service. Yeah. So avoid that. There is no good in it. That doesn't mean you can be friendly, and that also does mean that you can be quite strict. That is up to you. That's your style. But you are don't see yourself in this position, you know. Right? And it's of course difficult if you work with friends, right? So in the moment you are working with somebody, and you will work with friends because that would be the only ones that come to your workshop maybe when you start, fair enough, to practice with you, then just from the moment they sit in the hot chair until they leave it again, they are not a friend, of course. You forget about that. You don't know anything about them, right? They are like you have never met them before. Difficult clients. Sometimes you have a difficult client. You might all know that from your work anyhow, how that might look. I think it helps tremendously to look at them as a 4-year-old who's throwing a tantrum. Just the inner picture is enough to put yourself out of this drama, yeah, and have an inner smile about what's going on and take over the leadership role, yeah. Just to have the picture in mind. That's all that is needed often. If you feel resistance in the client, think about your own expectations. Yeah, maybe that is a sign. You know, you have a client that is resisting your help. Yeah, because maybe you have too many expectations into your own work, into what you do and how you present yourself and all of this, right? So just let it be a reflection onto yourself, right? And if there is the resistance is persisting, then it might be a father issue, right? So that would be then already an information from the field. So never feel bad about, never say, oh gosh, this is a horrible client. Just take what you get for your own reflection and as an information of the field. How to work with this client, because they wouldn't be there if you couldn't handle them. Because the universe is only giving us tasks we can actually master. That is a natural law. There is nothing that comes to us that we cannot handle. So it's something good in more challenging clients. We grow with them. Yeah. So dealing with expectations of the client is easier because you know what you have. So especially if they have done many family constellations before, and they come, let's say they come to one of your first workshops that you then offer after you have experienced yourself, and they probably want to tell you a little bit what you should do, right? So that can happen. How do you deal with that? Is staying in the centered in the truth, right? You are there, the facilitator. They come as a participant, not as a co-facilitator. What I would do is I would probably, if I feel they would be in the, they would be in the round setting, they would be somewhere in the group sitting, and they would be very friendly, of course, but always eager to have the last word. They want to have the last word. They want to comment what you said, right? They want that. That's normally when you know, oh, they want to sit in my chair, actually, right? So how do you deal with them? What do you think? How would you do that? Kimberly.
I would constellate them.
Yeah.
Like with me.
Very good. If they haven't done a constellation before, yes, you would ask them if you want to come and sit here. Yeah, very good. If they have already done a constellation and you don't want to constellate them twice, that would be too much attention, of course, to this ego. And you may don't have time for that, right?
I meant like constellate, like have them pick someone for me and have them pick someone
oh,
for
no,
them.
no. I'm glad you said that. You never do
That's
that.
what
Oh my.
did. That's what this guy in the book did.
What guy is this?
The book you suggested. I just read it last night. That's exactly what he did.
The art and practice. Hang on. Oh, where's the author? Where's the author?
Bertold Ulsamar.
Oh, Bertold Unheim. Well, show me where he says that. I'm sure this is a different context.
Let me see if that's the same author I have.
That must be out of context.
Well, and then I guess the person actually ended up leaving.
Anyhow, show me, send me an email with the or send me the copy. Send me a picture of where you read it, please.
Okay, well, I'm glad I did that because that's what I thought to do, and so.
No. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. No, you don't do that. You are never questioning your leadership role. You are not consolating yourself when you are facilitating a workshop. You would never do that. Never.
So he wasn't actually questioning his leadership role. He was questioning sort of, I guess, the dynamic between the two of them, if that makes sense.
I really have to read it, Kimberly, to understand it.
Okay, I'll try to find it.
But what I tell you, and I'm glad we talk about it, you never use the workshop for your own issues. And you never question your leadership role and making it about you and the participant. Yeah. That's not you will fall out of your leadership role, of course, right? You become a participant, you give that up, and then the group will not benefit from you anymore as much as they could have. Because they are there because they want your leadership. Right? It's not a random gathering where everybody has a say. They are here to work on their soul issues for their family, because we have to take this work serious. Yeah, that's what they want, and that's what they get, right? So if, but actually you are quite close there. So if the thing is, if the example I just make was that this client or this participant has or had a constellation. Otherwise, you would constellate for him, and you wouldn't put yourself in there as a facilitator. Whom do you think you would put there instead? Which family member is represented?
The father?
Exactly. You would put the father there. You would constellate father and son relationship. Yeah. But now that he had already constellation, you want to give him more time. And he was just going on and on and on about, right? Then you would say, we leave it here. Let's do the next constellation. It's like this ping pong, you know, this ping pong? This ping pong? Always somebody throws a ball at you, you are reflexes to, you know, what do you say? Play it back. Yeah, back and forth, right? So what is if you just step out and the ball just falls down? The ball is off the table, right? So when you the first moment you realize that he wants to engage you in a discussion, yeah, you say, you just go back to your leader role for what you are here for, and you say to him, we leave it there, who wants to work next? And you just don't answer the last question. Yeah. Or you don't make it about him. Another trick, you would say, okay, that's your third question now. Who else has a question? You know, making sure that the group is aware that he takes all the time. Like somebody else maybe has a question. And then when nobody else has a question, then you can say, okay, no questions further. So let's do the next constellation. Yeah. So make sure you're not drawn into, you know, take over the lead again if you lose it for a moment. Okay, next topic, changing the position of the client. As I said, demonstrated on the figurine board, yes, the client can change his own position, but the client, as long as he is represented in his own family constellation, is not in the family constellation. You never have the representative and the client together in the family constellation. There's either or, yeah? Because only one can actually go with the soul movement, not the two. That's kind of not how it works. Who's observing sits in the circle, who's representing is in the circle. That's a very simple rule. Plus a facilitator. What are we doing with absent clients? I just briefly said that. Yes, absolutely. You can constellate for absent clients. This is how Bert Hellinger started. He did only supervision groups. That was only psychotherapists were participants, and they brought their cases. That was the start of family constellation. And that is then from there, over the years, it developed to be a practice for lay people. Right? That wasn't before. So that's totally fine, because you are still, but if you have like, especially if you're a therapist and you have an ongoing relationship with your client, you are also ongoing helping. So you are ongoing in their family system at the bottom next to them. Yeah. So you're still in the family system, and yes, you can constellate for him. That's no problem. Or if it's not an ongoing relationship, if they ask you because they cannot come to the constellation, then you can do that for them as a substitute, but there need to be a really good reason for them not to come, right? Because why would they not come to a constellation? That's another hint. Yeah, if they're in the hospital, or if they are abroad, or whatever happens, yes, there would be reasons, but normally they should come before you do their job to work with them. So in this case, the seat would stay empty. There would nobody sitting there, and you don't need a representative for the client to sit in the hot chair. It's just empty. Yeah. And experimenting during a constellation is always what we do. That is not a lack of leadership. Yeah, don't mix that up. You're still in the lead. You're still leading the client while you're figuring out what dynamic is going on there. With, applying the questions, saying if it's true, trying to, know how are they related to each other. So that's what I call experimenting. Okay, now we have an exercise, but we also have a break. So what would you prefer? Do the exercise before the break or after? It takes us 10 minutes plus 5 minutes sharing. I don't mind. Any preferences?
Can we do a break first?
Yeah, okay, very good. So 10 minutes, and I see you again. Back to the recording. So exercise. Our exercise today is our exercise for today is to exercise leading a client in the light of what you have learned in the first 1.5 hours for today. It's of course one group, you two in a group. One is the helper, the other is representing a client. You can represent yourself as a client, of course, like you can come up with your own thing. The first part of the exercise is to sit in silence for at least 1 minute. You can put your timer on your phone to make sure you're not shortening it. Could be 2. And practice waiting in silence. This is not a practice to pick up as many information as you can. That's not the point. The point about this exercise is to be comfortable in not doing anything, not picking up anything, not trying to figure out anything. Just sitting, waiting, and silence. Yeah? Without any expectations. And then just see at the end, is there something coming up or not? But it does not need something to come up. It is just about you feeling confident with your client, sitting in silence. Now, when you think of the in-person workshop, when you have the client on your right shoulder, when you sit in silence, you are not looking at him. You look ahead, yeah, and you're not closing your eyes neither. You just, you look into the distance, and you're not turning your head and looking at the client and staring at him, right? You might want to observe the client, but but you can also just look ahead and just sit in silence. And that's what you do. So when you are sitting in silence, you're not looking in the eyes of your partner in this exercise. You're looking like to another spot, not turning away, but looking to another spot at the wall. Yeah. So you're not confused that with taking up. That's not an observation exercise. It's an exercise of being comfortable, sitting with somebody who might have expectations what you do and is very excited and very nervous what's going to happen, and you just sit there and do nothing. Yeah, that's the first part. The second part is then you ask the client about the issue. So you're not like, if you have picked up something, keep it to yourself and share it later with me. In this exercise, you ask the client what is the issue. And how you do that is the same as you use the strong words. You do it in a very specific way. You say, what is it about? That is open. The question is open. It's not assuming that there is even an issue. It's not assuming, anything. Of course, we never work with problems, so we don't ask, what is your problem, right? Or what is your issue? Issue is better than problem, but still you can also just ask, what is it about? That's it. And then you see what comes, yeah, from the client. Then you lead the conversation in the light that you have learned. You either let your client talk or not. That's your decision. When you think you had enough, you say, we'll leave it here, or that's enough. That's enough information. Yeah? And then I would like you to write down or memorize how would you start the constellation. So what would be the next step after you would talk with your client? Meaning, what are the representatives you want to have first to start with? Yeah. So you decide that. You don't need to say that to your client. You just decide for yourself. How would you start? And then this exercise is finished. You are not going into the constellation at all. You're not starting to facilitate. You swap, and then it's the turn for the other. Yeah? To do that. Okay, cool. So, put you in a breakout room. And I will tell you after 5 minutes to swap. Right? And I put my timer on. See you then. Okay, so how was the exercise for you? Who wants to share?
Interesting. I think from a personal perspective, what I noticed observationally, because I was able to look at myself, I need to pay attention to the facial gestures I make when someone is speaking. When Kimberly is speaking, I found myself matching affect with you, which was then, not what I'm supposed to do. So I thought that was a really good observation, which is different from what I do for work, because sometimes I need to match my client, which that was interesting for me to see.
Really?
Yeah, that was interesting. The silence part is pretty natural for me. Like it feels very comfortable. And then how did you want me to go through this, Maya? Just the experience itself? Yeah. Learning how to, when you've heard enough, to say, okay, we'll leave it here. I got this. I think had this not been a prompt to do, Kimberly, I would have let you kept talking. So the nuances of how I'm showing up really came to my awareness.
Very good. And where did you stop Kimberly talking?
Oh, where did I start? It was kind of sort of like I think I nodded my head and I said, okay, well, and you had a small pause and I took the advantage of the pause as opposed to stopping Kimberly. I waited.
You were waiting for the pause.
Like a sentence into you saying what you had to say, which was your husband and ADHD. So, yeah.
And so then share, how did you decide to start a constellation?
To pick the representation of her husband, and then also the ADHD.
And Kimberly?
Right? Yes. As a representative?
Yeah, I asked you. So who are the representatives you would choose if you would constellate for Kimberly?
For Kimberly, it would be her husband and the ADHD.
And where is Kimberly?
Oh, Kimberly. That's right. I lost Kimberly.
You lost your client. Right. Very good. Now it's good that you noticed. This can happen easily.
So Maya, if we only had 2 people to choose from, who should she have chosen?
Yeah.
The client always,
Me
of course, it's always about the client and then whatever problem, issue they have.
So would it, oh, go ahead, Kimberly.
I was gonna say, this is where it's confusing, and I thought Suman did a nice job of helping me to figure out what it was, because, you know, she was talking about, I was talking a little bit, it took me a while to get out exactly what it was, and it was, I was worried about my husband because he's really busy and between 2 things that are totally different projects, and he has this ADHD, and he injured himself the other day. He was rushing, trying to do something, and he put 12 stitches in his leg.
Kimberly.
Yeah.
You cannot consolate for your husband. You know that. We learned that.
So I don't know.
Oh, that's the first mistake.
That's the first mistake.
That's the first mistake, Kimberly. That's why.
He's not here?
You are not allowed to consolate for anybody else. Only for yourself.
So
the only exemption are the own children. Own dependent children. That's the only exemption ever.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so you can consolate for your own children, but not for anybody else. That's very good.
So then, Maya, with this example, so with Kimberly stating that right now I'm struggling with my husband and the distraction that he has. Kimberly,
it's her struggle that is the issue.
Yeah. Okay.
What did you say? It's what's the issue?
Your struggle is the issue. So you could consolate her and her struggle. You don't even need a husband, or let alone his condition, whatever that is. Yeah. So if you have only 2 representatives, it's Kimberly and her struggle. And it might lead you completely somewhere else. What?
That makes sense.
But you obviously you don't have only 2 persons, because when you are working one-on-one, you have objects, or when you're working in a group, you have more than 2. So you cannot do a constellation with 2 persons only representing that. It doesn't go anywhere.
Ideally, Maya, would Suman have put somebody in for me, possibly my struggle and my husband?
Yep. Maybe, maybe not. I personally wouldn't put your husband there.
Really?
Just put you and your struggle.
Yeah.
And see where it goes from there.
Exactly.
So it's always the client's struggle, unless it's their child.
Always. Even if they want to consolate for their children.
It's still theirs.
Most of the time it's their struggle. If they're very sincere about the children, they don't show any struggle of their own. They say, I'm really here because I want to help my child. I think it's a beautiful child. I have no problems with my child. He can do whatever he wants to do in his life, but he's always so unhappy, and I just don't understand it. Yeah, that is the only way when I would say, okay, here is the child, the client. But when the mother comes, oh gosh, I'm so, oh, my son, he's driving me mad. He's jumping up and down on the bed all night and doesn't want to sleep, right? You see what I'm going at, right? There's somebody coming with a problem because something drives them mad. The poor child is just the messenger. Yeah.
So
of course, it can
Kimberly,
be that it is possible that the child is represented in the constellation, but it's still the client is the mother. Yeah. Okay. All right. Kimberly, what would you like to share?
Well, and real quick, I just wanted to feedback real quick to zoom in when I was sharing with you, trying to talk about what I thought what it was all about. I didn't feel like your face was awkward. Like it felt normal to me.
good.
And then
Thank you.
having dealt with, other facilitators and stuff, it didn't feel too matchy. But that was just for the first part. I just wanted you to know that it felt comfortable. It felt very comfortable.
I appreciate it.
Yes. And so when Suman was the client, she started talking about how when she got on the phone with her mom, like she was just like she wanted to get off. And so I asked her, like, well, what's that feeling? And she came up with the feeling of frustration, and it felt kind of like irritation, like just that sort of thing. And so that's when I was like, okay, that's enough, once I got the feeling. And then for the constellation, and this is probably wrong now because I chose her mom and her mom's mom, but obviously we need to have Suman in there too. So I would choose Suman and her mom then. And then I think usually I'd have to bring in the mom's mom.
Exactly. So how was the phase of silence and waiting for you?
Fast. Fast for both of us. I was like, whoa. Right? Yeah.
Were you happy to do the minute, or do you wanted to do it longer, or could you have done it longer? Yeah.
Yeah. But the more I watch like the Bert videos, and like he's just so patient and just sits and he just lets it unfold, it makes me just want to sit like uncomfortably, like where it gets to be uncomfortable. And I feel like that's when it's like, when it's about to be uncomfortable, when it's about to, hit that is when to sort of interact. I feel like sometimes we go too fast.
Yeah. And that's really true. And this is really true for workshops. It is not so much true for online work. It is very different. This is why we have to do it online, obviously. For the training, it's perfect. The workshop, you can learn from the workshop, of course. I would like you to see the dynamics, but you cannot actually learn how to lead a workshop there. You have to really experience it for yourself, more in your area, to go to in-person workshops. And these are these experiences. The sitting and waiting in silent is, of course, much more profound if you are in person, right? So that's something that I probably don't prefer to do online. Then I just ask the issue and see what comes up, right? Rather than that. This is specifically because you have a group and you need to engage them or more online. Like when you're sitting in person, they are already focused on you and they feel your energy and your vibration and the room and is holding them together, while on a virtual room, it's not that easy. Yeah. No. Okay, now let's go to the next part. So now we're talking about leading the group. And I will go a little bit quicker through the charts so we are not taking too much time over the 3 hours. So leading the group is another thing, because if you're in a group setting, you're not only dealing with the client, you have also simultaneously the whole group, of course, and that it's expecting your leadership. Otherwise, things can really go astray there. right? So I have a abbreviation is CAI. That's easy for you to remember. It's CIA, but it's not. It's CAI. Yeah. And why am I coming up with this? Is because I'm thinking of a pack. I'm thinking of a pack leader. And when I talk about pack, I talk about a pack of dogs. I'm a big dog fan. I have 5 dogs, and I foster dogs, and I rehome dogs, and X-racing greyhounds. And I learned to overcome my fear of dogs and became an advocate for dogs because they are amazing teachers. And I learned this group experience really from my pack, right? How do they deal with each other? And that is so telling. And it's very simple. And that's exactly what you can do with your pack of participants, right? What is a pack leader? What does he have? Naturally, the trust of the pack to do the right decision. Yeah. So you need to be confident by what you do, not arrogant. Yeah. Then the pack leader has the oversight to step in when the pack needs order. You have to be assertive, not aggressive or dismissive. Yeah. You see, there's no emotion in your when leader is not emotional. The pack leader, the dog, can go and snap a dog and turn around and wag the tail. There is not an aggressive emotion by. It's just they need to step in. They need to show something wasn't in order. Now somebody has to feel it in this brief moment, and there has no consequences after that. Yeah. So that is assertiveness, no aggression or dismissive. Yeah. And then the third one is the pack leader has the strength to lead through unknown terrain. Yeah. That means you are in charge, and you do that through your body language. The body language is important. Yeah. Very important. So you need to stay centered. You either don't lean forward towards somebody, yeah, and you're giving them the lead, nor you lean back too much as if you're not interested. You really stay centered with an upright spine, the feet on the ground. This is why chairs, right? You can't do that. I think you can't do that sitting on the floor. And you are like a rock, you know. And that's your body language, and then they know, she's in charge. And that helps you leading the group. If you have confidence, you are assertive, and you have the body language of being in charge, nobody will doubt your leadership. What happens if they doubt your leadership? They will take over. They will fill in the gap. It's just a natural phenomenon when you work with groups. Now, when you do your own groups, and I know you all have done it, you are an expert in your field, right? So nobody is daring to take over the leadership. They are here to learn from you. That is different in a family constellation. Yeah. They don't want to learn from you. They want to work, right? They are not getting information. They want to work, right? So there's phases when you don't talk, phases in silence. There's phases where you're not showing any skills, you know? This is why this is a different kind of leading of the group. You need to be, and then when you start with facilitating, you're maybe lacking confidence, assertiveness, or body language, right? Possibly, right? So you need to focus on that, to practice that, because that will actually give you the lead of the group. So when I wake you up in the night and say, what do you need as a pack leader? You know, you have to say CAI. Let's recap. What is C standing for?
Confidence.
A.
Oh, I forgot A already.
Assertiveness.
Awesome.
And I.
You just said it.
In charge. I know the brain doesn't work like this. You have to repeat it a couple of times. In charge. So what do you do with the group when discussions come up? There's only one way to deal with it. You break it up. There are several ways to break it up. You can say, we are not going in any discussion. We are here to work. You can say, if you want to have a discussion, we have a break here and you can discuss these things. So you step out. Yeah? You just, they can have a break. They can do whatever they want in the break. Yeah? That's two ways comes to my mind where you can just break up any discussion. Best thing is not to give room for discussion. With CAI, there is no room for discussion, right? And there is no room for discussion if you structure your workshop. We will do that, I think, tomorrow. And you know where you are in your workshop and you know what you want to do next. And there is just no gap. There is no room. There is where the group can, jump in and discuss things. Yeah. And you always, because you are don't allow anybody to talk to each other anyhow, only addressed to you, when you are strict with that and you don't let that slide, there cannot be any discussion. And you can say, okay, if you want to discuss something, discussing in between them, like they want to discuss it, then you say, you do that after the workshop, do that in the break, or you say, we talk about that in another. Did we talk already about a friends and family and friends circles? No, I don't think so. No, that comes. So in this kind of circles, you can say this is great for discussion. So let's keep it for that. Here we are working. Yeah. Okay. Then comments towards other participants is something we have pointed out already. Absolutely no. Nobody's allowed to comment anything somebody else has said, done, whatever. Yeah. You keep your comments to yourself. You only you ask the participants to keep their comments to themselves. If they want to comment, always to you, never to a group member. That's an overreach into their intimacy, into their sphere. They're not there to be commented by anybody. That's not why they are there, right? A participant wants to help another participant. What do you think about that? Let's say a participant is in distress, maybe showing signs of sadness or tears are running or whatever, and somebody else wants to get up and whatever, sit next to them and hold hands. No, exactly. Big no. Well, let respect everyone to have their own space, to be able to be completely undisturbed by their release of energy. You don't even look at it. You don't even draw attention to it. Somebody can sit there and cry, and that is perfectly fine. And you continue with whatever you do. And if somebody else wants to jump in, then you say, go back to your seat. Everything is in order. Yeah. A little bit different is if you have couples of friends coming together. Yeah, they may want to hug themselves to somebody's crying or this. I would always say, God, they come together, they are used to do that. That's their problem. If they want to share these moments of intimacy, then they should do that. So I wouldn't feel that that's my place to interrupt that. But that is only for in this case. What about distractions? Let's say in your gathering room, a bird flies in through an open window, right? Or there's heavy traffic outside and it really gets loud and distracted, or there are children playing outside and they knock at the window and they look through the window, things like that. These kinds of distractions, right? These are kind of gateways for group dynamics to happen. Everybody all of a sudden feels in charge to deal with it, right? Not to lose the group, and not to create any group dynamics is the goal here, meaning that you immediately come up with a solution. You are saying about the traffic, can you please close the windows to reduce the noise, and you continue immediately with what you do. When the bird flies in, you would say to a participant, can you open the window behind you, and let's see if the bird flies out. If not, we just ignore it. And with the children, for example, you would ask somebody to get up and close the curtains. So you need to be in charge. Immediately checking out, okay, this is the situation, this is how we solve it, and you are giving direction. And then you continue with the work immediately and let participants, you're not getting up, you're not trying to fetch the bird, you're not opening or closing windows or curtains. You ask a participant to do that. A specific one, not anybody. Can anybody? No, you ask, can you open the window? Can you close the curtain, right? That's then the group is led, led through unknown terrain, and they don't have the need to take over the lead. What is if the group turns against the participant? Like there's probably a participant that nobody likes, whatever, yeah? And then all of a sudden something happening, and then they all say, whatever, something you shouldn't do. Of course, it's the same as if one is talking towards another participant, that has to be stopped immediately. If it's a single person or a group, it doesn't matter, the whole group. So what you can do here is probably the preferred method is to get up and do an exercise. An exercise where they have to work in pairs. A mother exercise, a father exercise, a partner exercise, an ancestor exercise, whatever. An exercise where they go in pairs. And one has to work with this, of course, person, and the other go in their pairs, and they are distracted. And they will get out of their head that there's something wrong with somebody. If they turn against you, that's very rare. I don't want to freak you out. That is very rare that this happens. But it is kind of possible that this happens, right? You do exactly the same. You say, you don't react to it. You said, okay, now it's time for our exercise or our guided meditation or whatnot. I would not make a break here because it doesn't help you to take over the leadership. Yeah. Here, you need to be on your toes and actively take over the leadership by telling what to do, doing this exercise, who goes where, blah, 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 you leading them all the way. And by the time they come back to their seat, they have their own experience, they are out, whatever has happened before, they will be snapped out of that, and you can continue with family constellation. Yeah? Okay, now we talk about leading the representatives. First of all, is you have to prepare with the representatives. You may have people who are there the first time who have no idea what they're doing. So the best way, I think, is to do that not before every constellation with somebody who is chosen as a representative, but make it like the opening of the workshop. And say, okay, that's what representatives do. Yeah, that's how they act. That's what they not do. And when you are called into a family constellation as a representative, that's how you behave. That would be the preparation, the preferred one. Of course, you can do that with every individual if you have a small group. Before a constellation, if you wanted to, works the same, just takes more time. Doesn't work for larger groups. Yeah. Then the next question is, does the client want to be represented? Because we always say choose a representative for the client, but maybe the client can represent themselves. So I think he has a choice. They have a choice. And you can ask, do you want to represent yourself or do you want to choose a representative? And 9 out of 10 would choose a representative, maybe 99 out of 100 would choose a representative for themselves. But if they want to represent themselves, especially if they are trainees themselves or very experienced, then that's totally fine. They can do that. There's nothing wrong with it. Then leading a representative, the old way was to guide them in position. That means putting the hands on the shoulders. You might see that on Bert Hellinger videos. I'm not quite sure if they are going that far back, but put them hands on the shoulders and leading them, and not you, the client does this, leading them through the room and placing them where they want them, and then they sit back, and then that constellation starts. Take some, it is, if you, when you start with in-person workshops, I would recommend you do that because it has great insights and you have time to observe, and it gives you great insights in how the client sees the situation, right? But then, of course, the field takes over. So the only one who is normally not guided by the field and not connected is the client. They are the one in their mind and their emotions and their expectations and all of that. They find it the hardest to connect to the field. This is why they need you and the group to connect with the field for them. This is why they need a representative to show them their soul movement, yeah, and not colored by their emotions or expectations or judgments or whatever they come with. Yeah, they're always full of stuff, of course, right? And you don't want to work with this stuff. So everybody else is connected, not the client. So when they choose, when they choose the representative and they put them in relation to each other, that's most likely how they perceive the relationship. Which is fine, gives you great insights, but then you let them sit down and then you let the morphogenetic field to decide. This means now you tell the representative they should move. And they should move in a position that they feel is right. And that is an innate ability everybody has, every human being, to decide what is the right place and what's the wrong place. They don't need to think about it. Yeah, it is. They don't need to train that or whatnot. You know, they know that. They know that, and you know that for yourself too, when you're in a family constellation representing. And that's where you ask them to stand and to look, right? And you can start like this. You don't need the client to put them. You will shortcut the constellation by 10 minutes if the client wouldn't place them. But as I said in the beginning, when you're training and gaining practice, it's a good way to start. But then later on, you can just let that go and ask the representative to put themselves in the room and see what the field decides. And then you take it from there. Make sure they are focused and collected, again, collected, like having all their senses together, all the apples in the basket, so to speak. That's important. You can use other words to describe that if you want to. That also means that they don't think or no, this is a trap. If you say somebody don't think, then they say how. I mean, think, you know, you always think something. It doesn't matter if they think, that's what you say. They can think whatever they want to. The field will take over anyhow. So they don't need to worry about what they think. You only want to know what they feel, where they look. They don't need to know why. Yeah. It's important that they don't try to make sense of anything they do. They are just resonating. Ask the representatives not to look at each other at the beginning is very helpful, especially if there are people that know each other, because then they might start to giggle or find that the situation is too odd, you know, in a family constellation for the first time or the second time. And it is good if the eyes don't meet before they are not completely, if you will, taken over by the field. So you ask them to close their eyes, take a couple of breaths, collect themselves, be relaxed and don't try to do anything. And then breathe, focus on the breath a few times, And then you ask them, when I asked you to open your eyes, you look either at the floor or at the ceiling or at the wall, but don't look at anybody to start with. Yeah. And then you would, they would do that. And then you would ask them to feel into their position. And if there is a movement, if they want to go somewhere else, if they want to go down or away or towards or whatever comes. And always ask them to open the eyes. Some representatives just want to have their eyes closed all the time. If they want to have their eyes closed all the time, there's only one way to deal with it. If they're really refusing to open the eyes, you would ask them to lay down. Because they are representing a dead person. Yeah. And then you ask when they lay down, is it good there? Is it better? And they would to almost 100% say, yes, that's great. Then okay, there's somebody dead. Of course, they do not talk to each other. They do not talk to each other as participants in the circle, and they do not talk to each other in the constellation either. That is a rule that you're addressing at the beginning, and you repeat that over the course of the workshop. The only one who's talking is me, and when you want to say something, you talk to me. So they raise their hand, you go to them, they whisper in your ear what they want to say, and then you decide what they have to say, if they have to say something. And it will be like, yes, please, or thank you, or any of the other sentences that you know. Yeah. But certainly not what they want to say. Because what they want to say is maybe, oh, I really want to forgive them, or I will never forgive them, or, these things come up that you need to rephrase into strong words that we can work with and the souls will move with. Advice to raise a hand. So that's what I normally do, to say something. If you got giggling or chatting in the representatives going on, that can happen, of course. Remember, that's kind of resonating with the field, and it's never happiness. You never have happy people. If you have happy people represented, they can sit on their chair. They are not part of the constellation. They're not necessary. Everybody who is there must not have a dense emotion, but is not happy. Happiness will disguise something, a deep wound, right? If this is really a family member to work with. So giggling or chatting can actually be a sign of that, or of a representative who is not willing to serve, who's not willing to connect, who's just not wanting to, right? And then you would ask them to sit down again and choose somebody else. But that's the last resort, because normally whoever's chosen is there for a good reason. Yeah. Changing the positions. So that depends. Yes, of course. So if the client wants to change the positions of a representative, no, he cannot do that. Right? The client maybe had their go at the beginning to place them, but he cannot go in and say, I want to change this position. The client is not leading, not facilitating the constellation, right? However, the representative can change their position, of course. But if they do that, you have to ask them to do it slow. The movement needs to be slow, not rushed. If it's rushed, it's not from the field. It's a kind of an emotional response to something. The field always has absolutely is no rushing, and will practically guide step by step. So you ask people, representatives who want to change position, to take one step and check in with themselves if this is then the right place where they are. And then if they want to move further, they take another step. Yeah. Same if they want to lie down, you ask them, yes, but don't crush down, just go slowly down. Maybe they want to kneel. Maybe they want to sit. Yeah. So you have to go through the stages and make sure that they are always connected with the field when they move. The facilitator can change the position of the representative, but only for a really good reason. Remember, normally we use our words to make the representative to change. That's the work. We find the right work that resonates with the soul, and then the movement is the result of it. But of course, there is a situation, and that's not even rare, that the one representative cannot see what's going on in his back. Yeah. So let's say there is the person you want the representative to work with is in the back, and they can physically not see him. You would probably turn them around and say, look over there. Yeah. And then you will observe the response. And if the response is, oh, right, okay, that's cool. Here's something to work with, that's great. Or when the response is, nah, I rather don't look there, then they can turn around again. So you don't force them into a position, right? You might see, but you would notice that there's a resistance, of course, that wouldn't go unnoticed. Yeah. And you would keep that in mind and maybe work with that resistance if that becomes important. You might, don't mix it up with sometimes Bert Hellinger. In some videos, you see him moving representatives around without words, right? But that is because so how can I explain that? He has the words already unspoken, so to speak, yeah, implemented into the representatives, right? So there is not a resistance. And he also sometimes is really strict and say, you have to stay there. When the representative says, I'd rather not be here, said, you stay there, yeah? And you can do that as well, but only if you're really confident that that's the right soul movement, yeah? And as a beginner, you're definitely not confident enough to do that. So as a beginner, you definitely allow the representative, because these are your helpers. Without them, you wouldn't know what's going on. So you allow the helpers to express within the rules that you set, yeah, what they can express, and you draw your conclusions out of it. If you have seen hundreds of family constellations and you know already when these and these are standing in that way, this and this is happening, yeah, then you can put them into this position, because that will resonate with the field. But until you don't know that, you would probably do something wrong, or you would probably jump a step that's important. So always go with what the representatives offer you. So changing the words, we talked about that last time. Find the shortest way to express what the representative should suggest to say. So assume this representative is raising the hand, you go over, they whisper in your ear what they want to say. Then you ask them to say the shortest way to express it. If you want to go with it, if that's what you decide, right? So as an example, I would say if the representative says to you, I really want to go over there and say them that everything is okay and there's no need to worry, and then on and on and on, and then you would say okay, and then you would decide that is probably the right thing, and you would then say okay, turn around and say to them yes. That's it. Just yes. No. I can't hear you, Kimberly.
Maya, your video was skipping a little bit. So like the last sentence.
Internet cut out a little bit.
Oh, my internet must be unstable. It doesn't say. Where did you hear what I was saying?
It's okay. What do they say? They turn around, do they say yes?
Yeah, in this case, this was just an example. They would
the
just
last
say
sentence
yes. Yeah, they would just say yes in this example, yeah. So that is the shortest way to express what they wanted to say. It could be longer if that's what you think it's important, but not too long. Of course, stop a representative if they want to go on. If they are not happy with only saying yes, then they say yes, yes, I'm really okay with yes. They do what they want to do and just add the yes. And they said, no, stop it, just say yes. It's important that they are not using their own language. It's important that they are using the family constellation language. This is also why we cannot use slang words in a family constellation at all. Yeah, like slang, like, oh mate, it's all good here, or something like that, right? That has no power. The souls are not reacting to that. Yeah, that only the words of power and the sentences of resolution are moving the soul. So when somebody says something in slang, then you just translate it into the language the field understands. What else do we have? Look at the body language and suggest the appropriate words. Remember, always acknowledging what is always where you refer to. That's always how we start, that's how we continue, and how we end. Acknowledging what is, and you know what is by observing the body language also. And then you just speak out the obvious in the way in our language, right? And that is already moving the souls. And it doesn't matter what the representative wants to say, because the body doesn't lie. The body language might be different to what they think they want to say, right? So yes, they are connected with the field, but that doesn't mean that every word they say is gold. The words are still translated through their own upbringing, their own mind, their own, they are not channeling the words of the family member. They are putting what they feel in their own words. That's what I want to say. So that can be deceiving. The body language is more important. If there's a discrepancy, maybe, between what they want to say and how they look. So in changing the words, always refer to the magic 3 words. If nothing else comes to mind, there's always a word at any situation any representative can say that brings the constellation forward. That's the good news. Okay, let's talk about traps to fall into. The client takes over the lead. You might know that because you work with clients, you have sometimes this manipulating clients. I'm sure, Suman, you have that in your practice frequently, maybe so even. So that's of course a trap. You just need to be aware of it and just stop it immediately at the beginning, and don't let that slide. It's really hard to revert to once they take over. So when you have the client in your hot seat and they are ranting about how horrible their childhood was, and you would feel this, you would feel this, oh my gosh, you would feel like this shock. They may talk about sexual abuse and whatnot, and you might feel like, oh, that really is horrible. Then they have already taken over the lead because you're reacting to it. You're responding to it in that way. So just notice that in yourself and go back to be collected and let them talk. And whenever something important is in there, the field will let you know. You don't need to be engaged in what's there. And then you stop them, like you have practiced today, whenever you think it's enough, and then you start working. That's the only way to, I think, the only way to get out of this trap, or not to fall in it to start with. The group can take over the lead, of course. That's another trap to fall in it. Again, that only can appear when you forgot your CAI attitudes, right? So you just go back to it immediately. Or you create a game or something that engages them all under your leadership. Yeah. One person in the group can take over the lead. That is this one person that thinks they would do a better job than you. They might be a trainee, they might be first, they might not even. They might have no clue of family constellation, yeah? But they will be sitting in the circle and they will be very nice. They will be kind. They will be nice. These are the worst ones. And then they will also have a but. They will hear you talking and they say, ah, yes, that's interesting, but. And then they want to have the last word. No? They want to engage you, they want your time, they want to, and then they want to show off with their knowledge. They would say, oh, that's very interesting what you say, but I heard something else. You know? If you hear that, you know, oh, they want to sit in your seat. Right? So don't let that slide again. Just catch it when it starts, the first sign. What would you do in this case? Of course, you can do a constellation if they haven't had one yet. But if in case they had one yet, or you don't want to constellate them because you don't get the impulse from the field at all.
I don't know what I would do.
Okay. So would you stand up and give him your seat?
No.
No, but you could, but it would be probably risky. Yeah, you could, and you make a little bit the workshop about your little quarrel with him, which you don't want. Yeah, yeah. So best is here to say, okay, we leave it here. We are just not doing ping pong. Just whatever, but this and this and this, and say, okay, we leave it here. Let's work. Just take over the lead again and ignore that. And don't be defensive. No.
Have you ever had to ask someone to leave a constellation?
I was in a workshop where somebody has been asked to leave, yeah.
Okay.
I have not asked, hang on, no. I have a faint memory. I had one, did I ask him to leave? I can't remember that, but I remember that I was in a workshop with Sophie Hellinger during the training, a group of 20 or 25 people or so. And then somebody really made a big drama there. He turned around towards the group, actually, not her, and said, "Oh, you all don't want me here, and this is rubbish. What you're doing here, right?" You know, he turned against the group, and then Sophie asked him to leave. And then he packed his bag. He was, of course, furious, and left the group. And when he left, she said he wasn't ready to work with his mother. Because remember, the group is representing mother and this rejection towards the mother. So she could have also asked him to consolate, but he was in a state, you know, where you wouldn't want him to consolate anything because he was kind of in this rage. Yeah, so that was the only way to leave. But it was the only situation that I remember. I remember I had one, what was it? It's so long ago. There was somebody, did I send them away? I know I wanted to send them away. I was contemplating about it. No, I think I asked them to go out of the door and sit there until the constellation was over or something. Yeah, yeah, and then come back if they wanted to. Yeah. So that's another thing. You could also, if there's a reason somebody is destructive to the group, you could also, okay, time out, take a walk, yeah, and come back after the break or after the constellation or Okay, the last trap to fall in, not probably the last, but what is it making mistakes? Well, first of all, in the universe, there are no mistakes, only misunderstanding. Yeah, so that's important. You cannot do a mistake. Yeah, you might have misunderstood a hint of the of the morphogenetic field or a movement. That's okay. You just own it. That's it. It is what it is. You can't reverse it. You shouldn't reverse it. There is nothing to do. You cannot do another constellation. It is what it is. Acknowledging what is. And rest assured, it is exactly the movement the family system wanted, anyhow. Especially with this misunderstanding. That will bring out something that you have no idea of at this moment. Because you're a little bit freaking out because you think you did something wrong. But that's not so. Yeah. So you have to really cope with your own expectations in this case. Oh, what's going on here? My iPad is doing what it wants. So the next thing is feeling confused. When you're in a constellation, you feel confused. You kind of don't get it, what's going on there, and you will see that in your practice workshops when you start to facilitate. Yeah. All of a sudden it went so well, and all of a sudden you kind of don't know how to further it. Yeah. That's very normal when you start, right? In this case, if you don't have me to help you through, you would just go back to the family of origin, mother, father, child. Always great. There's always work to do. There's always a movement. You are safe. You can do an interrupted movement. You know what you do, right? So don't shy away to say, okay, I don't need you and you and you anymore. Whoever was, whatever generations that was, please sit down and work with father, mother, child. Nobody will notice that it wasn't deliberate. And that's, again, acknowledging what is, that's exactly what the field expects you to do. Because this confusion is not your confusion, it comes from the field. Right? Because remember, you don't get any tasks that you cannot master. There's no reason to just stay there confused, letting your leadership glide, and then not, they will feel you don't know what to do, right? And that's not helping anybody. It's just opening up others to come in with their opinion, and they have no clue what they're talking about, and it all goes to custom. So you take over the leadership, you decide, okay, I'm confused. You don't say that. You decide, okay, I'm confused now. This is where I break it up, and I start, if I want to continue, I continue with mother, father, child. Either or, what not. Yeah, there's always something to do. Also, some, especially in challenging situations, try to lead with authority and say, I decide what's right, I decide what's right. Everybody's listening to me. That's authority versus wisdom, knowing that they are all here because they want you to decide, yeah, and that you are led by the field anyhow, right? And although you can say the same thing, I'm the one who decides, it comes from a different state of beingness. It's not a hierarchy. It's not a hierarchy, like in the authority. It's a spiritual wisdom decision. Very typical, very common is not closing a constellation at the right time, and that's not a beginner's mistake. I have heard from constellations with experienced facilitators that goes on and on and on, 1.5 hours even, as a standard of a constellation. Like, what can possibly happen there after 1.5 hours? What haven't happened in the first 30 minutes? Right? What's filling this 1 hour gap? Right? That's insane. But that's just how they do it. That's not what you do. Your task is, as a leader, as a systemic coach, is to find the peak moment of a family constellation, and that's when you close it. At the peak moment, not later, right? And that's what you train to observe in family constellation. Where is the peak moment? So when you come to the online workshops, then when you are not involved in a role there, or even if you are, you focus on where is the peak moment, what is the significance of a peak moment? Is a sigh of relief, normally in the client or in the representative of the client. Yeah, and that's it. And you don't get anything more than that. That's it. That's the peak. And then you break it up there. You leave it there, because the movement will continue from this peak on, right? You don't need to facilitate that anymore. So thinking, oh, because you haven't you never get everybody to have a sigh of relief. You don't want every representative to have that. That's not where we work. Then we are working for 2 hours, right? And we're bringing more and more and more representatives in. That's not for your client. It's about your client in this moment. The client is the messenger of the family system. He's going to tell you when the family system has gone its healing movement. It comes through the client, not the real client, because they miss it. They are not connected. Remember, they are not connected. They are least connected to the family field, to the morphogenetic field. It will be their representative. Their representative will have the sigh of relief. And that's when you break it up. Now, if you don't have the sigh of relief, there are other hints where you have a peak constellation. At the peak, for example, it could be in the middle of a movement. Let's say you have an interrupted movement in third generation or something, right? And the child, who's the grandmother, is stepping towards the mother, but not all the way. And they just cannot step further. Now to start, and you know, all the typical things you do, lying on the knees, lying on the belly, saying, please, 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 all this doesn't work. Then you're not just leaving it there and go somewhere else and work in another dynamic. This is the peak moment. And you break it up there, because this achievement is more than enough, this few steps, because it continues, the movement continues after the constellation. Yeah. And you can't take the momentum out by leaving it there and working in a corner of the workshop. Yeah. And finding there something or not, right? And then the whole energy from this movement is already gone. It's, you know, it's somewhere like evaporated, right? You hold the space, you hold this energy and leave it there, and then the energy can continue to flow. Then the other, like, this is one hand is like not finishing soon enough. The other one is want to finish a constellation is also not good. That's a trap to fall into, because you really don't want anything when you're facilitating, and you don't want to finish a constellation either. So you're not looking for this happy ending where you know, okay, when I see that, that's when I'm finished, right? Of course, you have in the back of your mind the orders of love and what you see when the souls move, when the representatives move in a certain way, in a certain order, in a certain direction. Then you know that is towards healing, bringing back order, letting love flow, yeah, reconciliation. You know that. That's all your knowledge, right? So, but you don't want them to do that. You know the difference? If it happens, great. If it happens and you see this happy ending picture, then that's it. Of course, that's the end of the constellation. Fine. But you don't want that. It can be something different. You can still finish it. You know, you can finish it although you don't see the end picture. You see everybody in the right order. You can finish it there. Yeah. Because you don't want to take anything, you don't want to get it to something lesser than that moment. There can be strong moments before even the order is completely restored, especially if you see a sigh in the client, in the representative of the client, even if the order is not established completely. That's where we stop it, yeah? And we don't want to wait till this moment, till we see it, and then finish it as a default, you know, set up in our minds. Another fall is overlooking an important fact or person in a constellation. Like if it is really obvious to most of everybody who was there that the mother needs to be there and you just didn't see it. Yeah, we call that, let's call it another misunderstanding. That is so. It is just what it is. I reckon not to ask so the situation, I give you an example. You have this constellation going on, everything seems to be fine, movements are happening, you observe some movements happening and you break it up there. And then you sit down and with the client, and then your client said, oh, well, that was really interesting, but I always had this picture of my mother was there, that it was missing. And then one of the groups said, I had the same picture. I thought the mother was missing. And then another one, me too. I was seeing the mother in there, you know, right? And then it dawned on you. It was so obvious, but you didn't see it, right? That's okay. So now the trap would be to say, okay, let's do it again and include the mother. That would be a trap. Don't do that. You said, that's fine. The mother might have been there or not, but it is what it is now. And that was what the morphogenetic field was guiding me to do. Full stop. Yeah. So you own that too, right? And not try to make it good in any way, shape, or form. The client wants to talk about the meaning of the constellations, of course, also a trap, if you will. The client is coming and say, oh, so what was all this about? I really don't get much. Can you explain that all to me? And then you say, okay, no, I cannot explain it all to you because it would disturb the movements of the souls. Yeah, and this is why you came for. Your family system sent you here to get this old soul wound healed. Yeah, but I can tell you that much. There was an unrecognized victim, maybe in the 4th generation, that we now have integrated into the family system, and that will bring the release. Yeah. So you can give one information briefly and in a general way, more generalized, and then let your client go. So he gets something for his mind to ponder on, but you don't explain the whole constellation, who did what, why, and you know, all of this. So, and then the biggest one is the client is not satisfied with the constellation, right? Now, what are we doing with an unhappy client? It is what it is. Yep, it is what it is. You are not there to fulfill his expectations, remember. You're there because the family system wants you to facilitate something that is probably beyond his or her comprehension. Yeah, so the need of the client is not what we are serving. So you just say, okay. And what would they say if you do the round and you say, everybody says a word, and then the one who says, they said, oh, I feel love, I feel freedom, I feel happiness, I feel whatever. And then the one person said, disappointment. Yeah. Yeah. You say, thank you for your feedback. Yeah. And go on with the next one. That's nothing up for discussion. That's their thing, and that's good so. That's what they got out of there, and that was important for some reason. Yeah. Okay, so I leave you here with another quote, but this is not from Bert Hellinger. This is from his favorite favorite poet. His favorite poet is Rainer Maria Rilke. I don't know whether you heard of him. He's very famous, like Shakespeare and Goethe, German, of course. And he was citing him back and forth and everywhere, and he was obsessed with him, and he's of course a great poet. So I chose this quote for you at the end of today, where we went through the art of helping. If you have this love for what is humble, and try very simple as someone who serves to win the confidence of what seems poor, then everything will become easier for you, more coherent, and somehow more reconciling, not in your conscious mind, perhaps, which stays behind, astonished, but in your innermost awareness, awakeness, and knowledge. I wish you a wonderful rest of the day or night, and I see you tomorrow.
Bye, Maya. Bye, Kimberly.
Bye.